All right. I think we're back. I'm here. All of our viewers are gone because we had to restart the stream. Hopefully folks will kind of find their way over to the new stream and apologize for the clunkiness here this morning. So whenever I'm out of the norm and don't have my support staff with me, things are always a bit sketchy. We'll hopefully make the best of this. And if we can get through this recording, you can at least watch it at your leisure later. Hey, Merrill's back, so we're good. So good morning, Merle, and we'll jump in here. So the first thing I was gonna while we're I'm kind of embarrassed anyway because of how this is going. I'll share a bit of an embarrassing story with you. Last night, I had probably one of the most vivid dreams I can remember in my life. And I don't know if you've ever had a dream that was so vivid that it kind of creeped you out in the morning because the things that were in your dream seem so real, but yet you can't recall ever seeing anything like that in your life, in real life, or in a movie or in a show. Or I mean, I can remember being places, talking to people, seeing things, doing things that I've never done in my life, and never can't remember like watching a movie that looked like this. There's nothing dirty about it, but it just I was in I was killing some time in Galesburg, so I traveled down a street that I'd never been before, just driving around in Galesburg. Happened to discover a huge mining op, and I ended up spending the whole day touring this facility, and it was just bizarre. And I usually don't have that good. If any of you out there do any sort of dream analysis or anything, you can call me up afterwards, and maybe you can figure out what sort of trauma I'm going through in my life that caused me to have this bizarre dream. But those of you who are a hefty person like me you'll get a kick out of this. One of the things that I remember vividly when I was on the tour of this facility, and this was an extensive tour. I mean, we're like going through the whole facility. I'm meeting with people, I'm talking with people, and where you go through on the tour is places where people travel through those passages, doing their jobs that work there. And I'm realizing that they must hire all little people because I actually got stuck a couple places in the tour and had to be got like people pushing me from behind and pulling me from in front to get me through. So anyway, maybe it's got something to do with the fact that I'm realizing I need to be getting in better shape and losing some weight. So anyway, back to kind of halfway normal stuff here on Ask the Agronomist. So I was up in the Monmouth area 2 days ago, I think, when I realized this. It was a sunny afternoon, it was a warm day. Saw some guys out spreading fertilizer, putting some lime on. Saw a few anhydrous tanks roll by, and I happened to be at an intersection that I travel through a lot, and on one corner of this intersection, there's a field that I know well, and I know the farmers that farm it. I usually spend some time in this field every year. It's been corn for many years, and so it gets deep rip typically in the fall with one of those ripper tools that you could almost plant behind. And by the time it mellows down through the winter, I mean this and that Monmouth soil, as you who've traveled there know, it's pretty forgiving. You could almost plant. It was dry. I actually stopped, got out, trespassed a little bit, took a little video. It was plenty wet, 2 to 3 inches down, but the top inch and a half to 2 inches was about as good as it's going to get for planting, honestly. And it just kind of struck me that holy crap, it's that day it was like February 20th. It's February 20th, and somewhere somebody's going to be getting itchy to get something in the ground. I know Adam Henniger actually has a now this is a planting date trial, so you always get a pass from me when you're doing planting date trials, because the idea of the planting date trial is to start super early. they may have had an opportunity since then to get another date of planting out there. And so it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. I do know from years past, there was a soybean planting date study that's pretty famous that was done over in Champaign County, that the earliest planting date was February 16th. And while that did not turn out to be the highest yielding planting date in the study, they did get a leavable stand out of those February 16th planted soybeans. So we have had mid February beans survive before. Now, I was teasing Adam the other day. The challenge his February 15th beans are going to have is they're going to come up too early, and the likelihood of them getting frozen off in March or April is pretty darn high, because with some of the forecasted temperatures we've got coming up, those poor things are going to be they're going to have their heads above ground in early March, and that probably will not end well for them. So, sometimes when you plant beans really super early, you want them to take their time coming up, and if you get a warm stretch that pops them out of the ground in 2 or 3 weeks instead of 5 or 6 weeks, they're probably going to be pretty exposed to a killing freeze that's coming somewhere there in the future. So we'll see how that turns out. I just wanted to take this opportunity to, and I know I have a bit of a reputation of being the patient planting guy, almost to the point of silliness sometimes. And last year, our colleague Derek Strubing, he was like trying to start a cage match between Cal and I, because Chris is more that, if it's fit, plant. And we've had some springs here lately where it was fit in March in some places, and people planted. It was fit the first week of April in places, and people planted. And while we got leavable stands out of those plantings, that never really turned out to be the best crop. Even in the case of soybeans, there's not really any data that I'm aware of that says that March beans will beat April beans, or that early April beans even will beat mid and late April beans. Now, March beans will often beat late May beans, but late April through mid-May would be your peak yield window for corn. So, on February 22nd here today, if you want to get some spring anhydrous on, great opportunity for that. I wouldn't be putting my spring UAN on, but if you've got spring anhydrous to do, this is shaping up to be a good spring to get that done. If you've got dry fertilizer that you didn't get on last fall, it'd be a great opportunity to get that done. If you want to do tillage, I'm okay doing tillage this early if your plan is to do a stale seedbed planting. So what a stale seedbed planting would be, you'll do your tillage, several weeks ahead of planting, and then you don't do any tillage right prior to planting. So you're planting into ground that has been worked. It's not no-till, but it hasn't been worked recently. And the true classical stale seedbed in my mind is you work it down in the fall, and then you don't touch it in the spring with anything but the planter. That works really nice on some heavy gumbo soils that tend to be impossible to work right in the spring. It's a little bit like what fall strip till is, really, because you make your strip in the fall and then you don't touch it in the spring. I'm not a strip freshener fan, so you strip fresheners out there can hate on me later. There's nothing a piece of iron is going to do to make that strip better than Mother Nature just leaves it for you there in the spring. So don't really see the need to freshen strips, in my opinion. If you're putting some fertility on while you're doing that could be different, because that's kind of a nice way to get starter on without having starter on your planter. So I'm cool with that. But normally, if you do a good job making that strip in the fall, that strip is just beautiful to plant into in the spring, and that would be a form of stale seedbed as well. So if you want to go out there now and knock down your chiseled ground and level it up and get it ready for planting, that can be a very good practice, because you always create a little bit of compaction when you're doing tillage. no matter how perfect the soil conditions are, especially if you're using like a something with a sweep or a shovel on it, you're gonna put a bit of a pan in the bottom where the bottom of that sweep or shovel is running. And we're probably going to get some wet dry cycles here. We'll probably get some freeze thaw cycles, although the current forecast doesn't show much freezing. But you guys all know how forecasts can change. So if you go out there now and level that up, and then it lays for a month or 6 weeks before you plant it, and then you plant right into that, that can be a beautiful, beautiful seed bed. So if that's your approach, I'm good with that. But if you're out there working ground now and you're planning on hitting it again before you plant it, I would park it and just be patient and wait and hit it one time before planting rather than two, because most of this ground doesn't really need two passes before planting. And if you give it two passes before planting, all you're doing is making it finer. You're making it more likely to crust. You're making it more likely to blow. You remember the horrific accident on I-55 last spring with blowing soil that was fine and dry and no residue left. So we don't want to be contributing to that. And two tillage passes before planting in the spring is just twice the wheel tracks, twice the compaction, twice the diesel fuel, twice the time, and less yield typically. So don't do that. But if you want to work stuff down and then try some stale seed bed, might be a great spring to do that practice. So I'll get off my planting date soapbox there. And I get it when Mother Nature is giving you perfect soil conditions, and you fought through years before where you never had perfect soil conditions. It's awful hard to pass those up. So I get it. So we've talked about stale seed bed. We've talked about working ground. We've talked about the early spring. It certainly feels like it's going to be an early spring. I think we've got some 70-degree temperatures forecasted a day or two next week. The last time I looked at my forecast, it's surprising how dry it is in some areas. I mean, even some places haven't really had a lot of snow, but most of us either combination of snow or rain or both had about 3 inches of precipitation in January, which is about twice normal, which is good. In the north, where we had snow cover, most of that moisture soaked in. As you go south, where we had less snow cover and a lot more frost in the ground, you guys probably lost some of that moisture because it wasn't really able to soak in. But you travel around that Monmouth area, it's kind of surprising. There's still drifts in the ditches are pretty nice. So it's kind of has a little bit of a South Dakota feel. I had a grower 15 degrees above normal in July and August with economic. One is nitrogen, because we talk about increase the risk, the potential for loss. It's moisture that causes the loss. So before you even plant, which is likely to happen if we stay on the warm side. We've got good moisture in the soil. Warms, that soil is going to wake up biologically, last forever, and eventually, those microbes are going to get your anhydrous converted to nitrite and to nitrate, and you're going to be in that, not getting a lot of water percolating through the soil, moving water to tile lines. That nitrogen is going to set there to come along. However, if we do turn off wet, if this early warm spring turns, that's a scenario where I'd be, a little bit concerned about nitrate loss, and a little bit concerned about the fate of that fall applied nitrogen. If you put on nitrogen in the spring, if you're doing it this early, I would encourage you to consider using an inhibitor with that spring application as well. The people that sell inhibitors, do have data to support that there can be a benefit to using inhibitors even in the spring. And if your spring application is in February, I would, if your spring application is more of a winter application, then I would probably encourage you to talk to some people and at least consider the benefits of potentially having that inhibitor in there. Mentioned if you've got spring fertilizer to apply, great opportunity to get spring dry on. That's a little bit of a trend that some people are promoting. We're trying not to put fertilizer on frozen ground anymore. We're trying to have less surface loss of fertility and the irrigations. But there's a text from Adam. Okay, all right. My production staff is talking like, so apologize for that. And but anyway, a little bit of a, I guess I'll say a trend or a wish out there for among some people that are concerned about the fate of fertilizers. Other implications of the early get out there. Your cover crops are going to take off sooner, on earlier as well to get ahead of the weeds, but just be aware that trying to control weeds from February to September. And, a lot of products are really not designed to last that long as a residual. So, using full rates, using strong residual products, using multiple applications with overlapping residuals, which we've talked about numerous times. All of that stuff can become even more important if you're making those applications earlier in the season, either because you planted earlier than normal and that caused you to move your application up, or you had field conditions that allowed for applications, so you went ahead and made them early to get them out of the way. Or, if you're worried that the weeds are going to get an early start, well, then we need to stay ahead of the weeds. So there may be a need in some cases um, to manage those weed populations a little earlier if they're going to get started a little earlier. So I think touched on everything I wanted to relative to weed control, early planting, tillage. It's like we don't have any questions coming in yet. Hopefully the buffering is not too bad. I know my phone's buzzing. I'm afraid to look at it because I don't want to get distracted by what Adam and Jennifer are talking about. And hopefully the quality of the video this morning is not horrible for you. I did want to talk a little bit about there's been a couple, we'll say controversial things going on here lately. So this is the time of year when seed companies are typically, firming up their orders, firming up their supply, still got quality testing coming in, still bagging, still conditioning. If you've got any winter production, it probably hasn't come back yet. So you're still kind of having an educated guess, which is getting more educated with every passing day, what your actual true supply is. And the bigger your company is and the more dealers you have, and depending on your distribution model, do you have dealers or agents, and does the company own the seed that's setting at the dealer, or does the dealer own the seed that's setting at the dealer? It can actually be more challenging than you would maybe appreciate to know exactly how many bags of something you have available to sell. And we oftentimes will run a little short on some things that have been very popular. So if as a dealer or as a customer you've had a frustrating conversation with your FSR as of late about a few bags of this that are going to get cut, or a few bags of that are going to get cut, rest assured we do have lots of good options to substitute in for those products. And I know the word substitute is a dirty word this time of year, because your perception is you're not getting what you wanted, and you're getting substituted with whatever crap we had left. That is not the case at all. We've got really good options for substitutes. It's been a little bit of an odd year, in fact, that we've actually have some things available to us as substitute products that in December, we couldn't get as much of as we needed, and we wanted to have more supply of those products as well. And in several cases, I've actually got data to support that the product that we're offering as a substitute is actually a superior product to the. Now, it's maybe not as popular because maybe it's at a higher price point, or maybe it's new, or maybe you haven't planted it before, maybe you don't have the past history with it that you do with your beloved product that you're maybe not going to get as many bags of as you had hoped. But we've got lots of good options for covering those shorts. As a percentage, the shorts were actually less than they are and have been in past years. So it's always uncomfortable. It's always painful. It's always frustrating. Our salesmen and dealers don't want to have to deal with it every year. Our customers don't want to have to deal with it every year. But it is kind of a nature of the beast, and if there is a silver lining, it is that we do have some really good options to substitute in for those products that we do have. We are a little bit short on, and again, it's not a lot of products. There's 4 or 5 products that were impacted by cuts, which we sell about 60 corn hybrids in our geography. So 4 or 5 products out of 60 being impacted, but obviously, if it's the one you wanted that gets impacted, that's all you care about, and we understand that, do the best we can to deliver the product that you've been looking for, and in most cases, I think we do a good job of that, but unfortunately, we are not perfect, and we're going to do the best we can to satisfy our customers, and we appreciate your patience and your understanding with that. And rest assured that whatever product we recommend you plant, we have a high degree of confidence that it will perform very well for you on your farm, and decent chance it could actually perform better than maybe what you were planning to plant in the first place. So enough time spent on that. FSR is probably cringing when anytime agronomists start talking about supply. Adam gets pretty fired up because Adam is our corn supply manager, and Adam's a great salesman, and it's generally better for a great salesman to talk about supply than it is a mediocre agronomist. So Adam always, if he was sitting here, he'd have a nervous look on his face when I start talking about supply. So enough time on that. So I'm gonna springboard from one somewhat controversial subject to an even more controversial subject, and that's one I'm going to bucket in a category that I call freedom to operate. And what actually prompted me to want to talk about this was not necessarily the recent vacatur of the dicamba label and the subsequent existing stocks use order that was issued. We might spend a little bit of time talking about that as well. But what prompted me to talk about this was a really good article that I read in the Illinois Agri-News. I think it was in last week's, so it was on the front page, and it was discussing EPA's approach to, I guess, stronger adherence to the Endangered Species Act. So the Endangered Species Act has been on the books since, I think, 1973. EPA has acknowledged, and they've lost some lawsuits over this. They have acknowledged that, there is some language in the Endangered Species Act that we probably haven't been adhering to as strongly as we could have as a pesticide industry. So EPA is currently reviewing, what are going to be moving forward. How are they going to handle the Endangered Species Act? So we're fully anticipating that all new product registrations are going to have language around endangered species. And every time a product gets re-registered, there will be language around endangered species in those labels. And you're probably, if you've been trying to use the Extend system, trying to use the Extend Flex system, trying to use dicamba, or even if you've been using Enlist, you're familiar with the endangered species language that's in those 2 product labels. Well, you might be thinking that language is in there because of the nature of dicamba and 2,4-D But that's really not the case. That language is in there primarily because of those products being newly registered, and there being, legal challenges that have come forward. Um, and endangered species protection has been used by opposition groups to, win some lawsuits against EPA that, hey, claiming you need to be regulating this more strictly. So there's kind of two different opposing views. If you're a registrant, which would be the companies that make these products, or a retailer or a farmer, you probably think that EPA is regulating things really, really tough, really, really hard, really, really strong, making it difficult for you to use these products, and wishing that, boy, I wish it was a little easier to use these products. Well, on the other side of that argument are organizations that are very well funded, very well connected politically, and eager to sue EPA, making the argument that you're not regulating things harshly enough. You're not regulating things strong enough. So EPA is caught in the middle between these groups that keep suing them, saying that, well, you need to be tougher. And then the farm organizations and the commodity groups and the herbicide injury and the retail industry arguing that, well, you got to let us do our jobs. You got to let us take care of farmers. You got to let us control weeds. And they're trying to navigate that really challenging space in the middle there. So there's going to be a lot of things that probably change in the next couple years around endangered species on a lot of products. I think every new product that gets registered, or every old product that gets re-registered, is going to have to work through this. And so it's going to make it, I think, probably more difficult for us to utilize products the way that we're accustomed to. And it could start to impact products that you would have never dreamed it would be impacting. So I think people, are probably going to become more the norm when you're looking at herbicide than the exception. So, I'm a big reader myself. I don't read every publication that comes to my mailbox cover to cover. But if you have an interest in knowing kind of, or a farmer, might be worth reading that article that was in the Agri-News, because it did a pretty good job kind of laying out the realities of that situation. And EPA is going to try to make things in their mind simple and practical and able, easy for us to follow. But people's definitions of what's simple and practical and easy to follow do tend to be different. So different people might have different perspectives on that. So I thought it was an interesting, scary article to read, because it's going to be a challenge for our industry, whether you're a farmer, a retailer, or a pesticide manufacturer, because the likelihood is it's going to get more difficult to utilize a lot of products as they put more scrutiny on the Endangered Species Act, and more to come on that. So anyway, that's about all I had here this morning. So we don't have any questions coming in. If you want to ask a quick question before we sign off early here, please do. Apologize for the clunkiness of this episode. Hopefully next episode we'll be back in a normal spot. I'll have either Adam or Jennifer there to help me, and they can help me keep my head above water. But always enjoy visiting with you here, and spring is just around the corner. So hopefully, our planter's not ready, and the tractor that pulls the planter currently has the transmission out of it. So there won't be any early planting going on our farm. We'll probably be lucky to have our stuff together in time for timely planting, let alone early planting. I could tell you a horrific story about this transmission job, but we'll maybe we'll save that for another episode, or a one-on-one conversation over a beverage. But it's been a deal, let me tell you. So anyway, with that, we will sign off. Everybody stay safe. We'll be back with you in 2 weeks. Which let me look up here real quick what 2 weeks is. So that would be in March, and it would be, I think, March 7th. Yeah. So assuming that something drastic doesn't happen between now and then, we'll be back with you on March 7th. And everybody stay safe and enjoy the beautiful weather. Even if you have a nice shop to work on your planter in, it's pretty good weather for working on stuff in the driveway too. So that's what we always have to wait for on our operation. So y'all take care.